I've been waiting for a plastic Centurion kit in 15mm for years, and Battlefront have finally delivered. I did a quick look at this kit a few months ago, but now it's time for a proper review. While Battlefront's plastic Centurion kit was released for Nordic forces, there are a lot more options on the sprue. Stick with me to find out. This is TSWBX02, the Centurion Tank Platoon box for Nordic forces in Team Yankee. It's a 5-vehicle platoon box for Swedish and Danish forces, but there's plenty more options for different variants on the sprue. Given how widely Centurion was adopted, that just makes sense. There really is a ton of options here. You can even build the original Mark I from 1945. With the 17-pounder gun and a 20mm Polston cannon. And that's where this review is going to deviate a bit from what you might expect. I'm going to look at the kit and talk about all the parts and options, but I'm going to try and build an Australian Centurion Mark V for NAM. Let's see how close I can get with what's in the box. But first, some history. Centurion was designed at the end of the Second World War, just too late to see service. Designated the A41, Centurion was a late-war development of the British cruiser series, sharing some features with contemporary tanks like Cromwell and Comet. The A41 design introduced sloped armour to British tanks, increasing the effective armour thickness. The Centurion Mark I was armed with a 17-pounder main gun, with a 20mm Polston cannon in a flexible mount beside it. This coaxial gun was changed to a Beezer machine gun in the Mark II. Centurion received the new 84mm 20-pounder gun as it became available. Initially, this was a Type A, with a 2-step muzzle counterweight, but later vehicles received the Type B gun, with a prominent fume extractor. Suspension was a Horstman type, with 3 sets of double bogies on each side. The ride quality was worse than the Christie suspension of earlier cruiser designs, but took up less room in the hull and was easier to maintain. Production began in November 1945, with the more powerful Mark III starting production in 1948. Centurion saw extensive combat in Korea in the early 1950s, and Operation Musketeer in the Suez in 1956. Centurion was widely exported. Australia was one of the first foreign adopters of Centurion, although delivery was delayed until 1952 because of the Korean War. Initially not deployed to Vietnam with the 1st Australian Task Force, Centurions quickly proved their worth in May 1968 at the Battle of Coral and Balmoral. Firing canister and machine guns in support of 3 RAR, Centurions helped beat back a number of determined attacks over several days. Israel was another operator, fielding Centurion during the 1967 Six-Day War, 1973 Yom Kippur War, and the invasion of Lebanon in 1982. These tanks were extensively upgraded with the L7 105mm gun, improved fire control, additional machine guns, ERA armour and diesel engines. Despite being retired as gun tanks by the IDF by 1990, many Centurion hulls were converted to heavy APCs and armoured engineering vehicles. In the early 1950s, NATO countries needed tanks, but the M48 pattern had not yet entered production. Instead, America paid for Denmark and the Netherlands to receive Centurion under the Mutual Defence Assistance Program in the early 1950s. Denmark upgraded 106 Centurions with the 20-pounder Type A gun to the 105mm L7 in 1964, and 90 of these received laser rangefinders and night vision in 1985, becoming the Centurion 5 DK. Sweden bought Centurions in 3 waves between 1953 and 1960. These were all upgraded in the mid-80s, adding laser rangefinders, upgraded fire control, 105mm guns and night vision. The original Meteor engines were also upgraded to Continental diesels. If we look at the back of the box, there's two images of the completed kit, one for the Danish Centurion DK105 and one of the Centurion Stridsvagn 104 Centurion, both armed with the 105mm main gun. There's also an insert image showing the 20-pounder Type B option for Danish tanks. This represents the Danish tanks that didn't receive the L7 105 upgrade. The Centurion Stridsvagn 104 has the Continental diesel engine upgrade and explosive reactive armour. There's usually an exploded assembly diagram on the back of the box, but this is printed on a separate sheet in this box. There's parts to build 5 tanks, as well as a sprue of commander figures. Let's look at the plastic. The parts are moulded on 2 sprues of dark grey plastic. This sprue has the tracks and hull parts. There's a lot of standard Battlefront plastic features here. One-piece tracks, opened and closed commander's hatches, keying on the hull for the tracks and so on. The moulding is sharp and well detailed. I've been waiting for a Centurion in plastic for ages, and this one generally looks pretty good. This is the upper hull. Centurion was one of the first British tanks with sloped glacis armour. The driver's hatch is closed, but shows the driver's periscopes with armoured covers. The big cutout for the engine deck allows different decks to be fitted depending on the mark of tank you're building. Tracks are one-piece parts. Track detail is a fairly simple bar pattern and is consistent around the track run. Given some Centurions don't use the side skirts, the upper part of the run will be visible. The 6 road wheels per side have good bolt detail. The tracks are keyed so they'll only go on the right way. There are 5 main gun options for this kit. Here are 3 of them. Top to bottom, they're the L7 105mm gun, the 20-pounder Type B with fume extractor, and the earlier 20-pounder Type A. Despite having lots of options, the guns are probably the most disappointing aspect of this otherwise excellent kit. The plastic 20-pounder Type A barrel just has a simple collar counterweight. The real thing had a distinctive 2-step muzzle collar. It was quite prominent. The kit part isn't even close. The kit's 20-pounder Type B barrel has the fume extractor and even has the distinctive 3 balancing counterweights. However, the fume extractor on the real thing was much wider and more pronounced. You can see from the insert image, it's quite drum-like and sits well proud of the barrel. This is even more baffling an error since Battlefront's own earlier resin and metal Centurion represents this gun shape more faithfully. This might sound like a minor quibble for a 15mm kit, but it's quite noticeable and should have been easy to get right. It's not a deal breaker, but it is disappointing. This is the later turret, used with the Mark III onwards. It's an angular cast design with a welded-in top plate. The loader's split hatch is moulded closed, but the commander's hatch is a separate piece. The engine deck here is the earlier pattern for the Meteor engine tanks. This piece glues into the hole in the rear of the hull. It includes the fishtail exhausts and the gun travel lock. Nicely modular. This rear hull piece goes with the Meteor engine deck. Both parts are marked with a large A underneath so you know they go together. The gun mantlet here has a canvas shroud. This was used for the 20-pounder and 105mm guns with the later turret. The pyramid beside the gun is the twin mount for both the coaxial machine gun and ranging 50 caliber gun. These stowage bins fit on either side of the turret and include the shell ejection port. This 30 caliber Browning machine gun is for the commander's position. Many Mark V and later tanks, including the Israeli and Australian versions, use this. Here's the left and right side skirts, and you can just see the turret rear stowage racks. Open and closed versions of the commander's hatch are provided. There's a minor boo-boo here too. The closed version is correctly moulded with the hatch hinged to open back and slightly right. The open version has the hatch opening straight backwards. Not a big issue, and you'd probably not notice it, but slightly inaccurate. Moving on to the second sprue, this one has the early turret parts, ERA, machine guns, 2 more main gun options, and the later engine deck. This upper turret is for the Mark I and Mark II. It's smaller and a different shape. Again, there's an opening for the commander's hatch. The mantlet is for this version too. It's designed for the 17-pounder gun and has a separate mounting for the coaxial machine gun. The angular mantlet is for modern variants with explosive reactive armour blocks fitted. These are the left and right stowage bins for this early turret. There appears to be a slight sink mark on the right-hand one, but nothing major. Various marks of Centurion had different secondary armament, and some of the optional machine guns are here. Top is an MG3. Below that is a Browning 7.62mm machine gun and a 50 caliber HMG at the bottom. The upper 2 guns are AA machine guns for the commander's position, while the 50 cal looks like a coaxial mantlet mount for the Israeli version. Next to these is the open and closed commander's hatch for the early turret. This is a split hatch design. At the other end of the sprue are 2 more main guns. On the left is the 17-pounder gun. This was the armament of the initial marks of Centurion, the same gun found on Firefly and Challenger. Next to that is the most modern gun in the kit, the L7 105mm gun with the thermal sleeve. This is the gun used for the Danish Centurion DK and the Swedish Stridsvagn 104, amongst others. At the top are the hull and turret ERA block parts. These are the Swedish pattern blocks for the Stridsvagn 104. This engine deck is for later Centurions modified to take Continental diesel engines. Diesel engines give better fuel economy and performance, as well as reduced the risk of fire if the tank was hit. This deck takes a new hull rear piece as well, shown here in red. Both parts are helpfully marked with a large B underneath to help you match them up. Technically, you can also use this later hull rear for the Mark VII and later Meteor engine tanks as well. The remaining parts are for a searchlight and some spare track links. So that's the parts for Battlefront's plastic 15mm Centurion. The kit is very versatile, including options for many variants of the type for different operators. The overall quality is up to Battlefront's usual standard, with good, strong detail crisply moulded. The modular design of the engine decks is impressive. The single hull with deck inserts is efficient and saves on wasted plastic. It's a shame there isn't a second turret lower piece, otherwise you could build both turret options. However, despite this being a great kit, there are some missed opportunities here. Don't get me wrong, I'm very happy to have Centurion available in plastic, but an honest review needs to acknowledge issues. The open commander's hatch error is pretty minor. Most people won't notice this on the completed kit. The deficiencies in some of the gun barrels is going to be more apparent, and less understandable since Battlefront already modelled a more correct 20-pounder fume extractor on their resonant metal kit. Again, none of these are deal breakers, just disappointing features that could easily have been stronger. The kit has lots of options, but has only officially been released for Nordic forces, Danes and Swedes. The kit options can be used to field many more variants, but are there any options missing? This kit could build a Mark II just by replacing the 20mm coaxial gun with a Beezer machine gun. These would be easy to source from any late war British kit like Comet or Cromwell. The ERA in the existing plastic kit is the Swedish pattern. It might pass muster for Israeli Blazer in 15mm, or Battlefront might develop an add-on ERA pack for the Israelis. Australian Centurions for NAM need the distinctive rear external fuel tank, plus some additional stowage. That already exists in metal for the older resin kit, so a simple bagged upgrade pack would be very simple to do here. Did I miss any options? Let me know in the comments below. With so many Centurions to choose from, what stat card should we look at? I've already covered the Anzac card for NAM in a previous video, so maybe let's look at the more modern Swedish Stridsvagn 104. This is a tank unit with the ERA and infrared rules. ERA raises the armour to 16 against heat warheads, useful against anti-tank guided missiles and RPGs. Skill and remount are 3+, with all other stats being a 4+. Centurion is also hit on a 4+, pretty standard for Western trained troops. Front armour is 14, side 6 and top 2. Even with ERA, this is very thin armour by the Team Yankee timeline of the 1980s. Tactical move is 10 inches or 25 centimetres, with up to 18 inches as a road dash. Centurion isn't a speed demon. What it is implacable. With a 2+ cross, it will grind its way through most terrain. The main gun of the Stridsvagn 104 is the British L7 105mm gun, an excellent weapon. It has a 40-inch or 100cm range, with a halted rate of fire of 2 and moving of 1. Anti-tank is 19, up from the 20-pounder gun 16, but still showing its age in the 1980s. Firepower is 2+. The gun also gets the brutal, laser rangefinder, smoke and stabilizer rules. Brutal weapons force infantry and unarmoured tank teams to re-roll successful saves. Laser rangefinder removes the +1 to hit penalty for targets over 16 inches. Stabilizer boosts tactical speed to 14 inches or 35 centimetres, allowing stabilised weapons to still fire, but with a +1 penalty to hit. Unstabilised weapons can't fire, and the team can't assault if it moved more than 10 inches. The Swedish tank gets an AA machine gun as well as the coaxial MG. Platoons are 3 tanks, coming in at 9 points. This means while Centurions are cheap, you don't have the option to field them en masse like the larger Soviet companies. So that's the plastic Centurion from Battlefront. This is a versatile kit with lots of options to build tanks from the 1940s to the present, and covers NAM and Fate of a Nation as well as Team Yankee. There's some good modular design here, but let down by some baffling deficiencies in the moulding of some of the main guns. But it does build up into a nice kit. There might need to be some add-on packs for Israeli ERA and Australian Mark Vs, but this could be easy to include as supplementary packs for the base kit. Centurion will struggle in Team Yankee against first-line designs, but that's something to keep in mind when building your force. I'm looking forward to seeing Centurion roll out for other nations and games. Is there a Centurion type you're particularly excited for? Is there something missing from the kit, or an add-on you'd suggest? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.